It is. It's podcast day. We're excited. We're digging out there. What do we got? Ooh, yes, absolutely.
Dude, it's fucking podcast day.
Takes you back to that time of when you remember what you were doing when you first listened to that album, or
What is going on, you champions? That's right. Yes.
What up?
Podcast day. Two dudes talk music. Yes, it is. I've been stewing on this shit all day.
What is going on?
Yes.
It's that time. Podcast time. Yeah, spill the beans, man. Spill the beans. We want it. We want this, the exclusive details.
How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. How are you?
So yeah, I don't know why we're acting spontaneous. This one's a pre-taped episode.
It is.
Pre-taped episode. We recorded this one a couple of weeks ago. Obviously because right now when you're watching this, I'm in fucking Vegas. So hey, wish me luck. Hope I win at the fucking roulette table.
You will. You will.
All right. So yes, this is the pre-tape one. Old mate Kyle will be in the chat, hanging out. So still feel free to engage, ask some questions. Obviously, we won't be able to ask them of our guest, but if you have questions for Kyle while this is going, drop them in the chat there. Obviously, we still have that Gymna Rocks Fest giveaway coming up. That double pass. Make sure you follow or subscribe on the Twitch channel. That's the best, only way to be in the running.
Mm-hmm.
Once we get to 100 followers, we're going to draw a winner out of that. So that's the only way to be in it, is to be following the Twitch channel. Other than that, like, share, subscribe on all the social media, all that good stuff. But I think we should get pretty much straight into this one. You reckon?
Yeah, let's
You
do
reckon?
it. Let's do
All
it.
right. So today we have old mate from SIRUS. These guys doing electronic music since forever, long time now. Mate, how you doing?
Yeah, good, man. Good to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I know it's gonna be pretty late by the time we get done with all this, so appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And yeah, so mate, Cyrus, you guys have been around for quite a while now. Did that start?
About 14 years now.
14 years, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy. And did it start with like just a one-person thing, and you've added more people over time? Did it start as a group? Like, how did it all come about?
It was just me, like, for the first maybe 2.5 years. And then I added a synth player, and then we did shows together for would have been maybe another 2.5 years or so. And then after that, we got two musicians to kind of just do live stuff with us on stage to begin with. And that was sort of around the same time we were experimenting with live drums and live female vocals. But those two members ended up staying on board and becoming permanent members, and so we've been a four-piece for another maybe 7 years or so, and now a very solid three-piece proper band. And it's gone from something that was very performed very much like electronic music in the beginning to something that's now performed a lot more like a metal band.
Awesome. So, I mean, for comparison, if you're not familiar with Cyrus, it sounds almost very similar to like a path that Nouveau went in a lot of ways as well. Like, I know obviously you know Barnsey, you know Nouveau, you've worked there. I know Barnsey was basically a DJ in the beginning, starting out with that before moving on to creating original music and then bringing a band in. Has the lineup, the people that have been involved with the group, has that remained fairly consistent though, or has it been a bit of a,
No, it's been mostly consistent. I would say we have thought in the past about adding more members and then switching the lineup up and doing different things, but at the end of the day, once we found a really, really good drummer and very good female vocals from Kiva, it just sort of it was solid enough to not have to go and add. Some bands, like, they'll add for an album or two, they'll add an extra guitar player, or they'll do something if their album sound demands it. But I move around genres too much, and I couldn't invite someone in just to let them go.
Yeah. So you mentioned Kiva there, right? That's the same Kiva from is it Tomorrow's New Format?
Yes, that's
Stuff. Yeah, we
Kiva's
had
relatively new band. Yeah.
we had them on a little while ago as well. We had them on not too long ago, so that's awesome. She seems to be doing a lot in a lot of different areas, which is awesome to see. I love when people can, spread out and do a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah.
She's a fantastic singer too.
Oh,
Absolutely.
really, really good. Really, really good singer. And did you find, I mean, I suppose naturally bringing in other people to be involved would maybe change the way you write a little bit, or is it all still kind of your show and you write everything and they just like maybe add a little spice?
Oh, I think it's like I still write everything, but I'm definitely inspired by having amazing musicians in my proximity, and I actually it's funny. Kiva started off as a bass player, not for us, but for another band. I think Pyrenees they were called a long time ago, and it's very very funny to think about Kiva as a bass player. There are some old photos, and that makes me laugh. And I was going for one track with a little extra female vocals once, and I heard from them that they could kind of help with maybe backup vocals. And then when I heard them sing, I was like, okay, you shouldn't be a bass player. You should sing in my band because Jesus Christ.
You're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing voice that Kiva brings to the table, though, for sure.
Yeah.
And so for those live shows, I mean, do you find yourself playing more with metal bands or more at, like electronic type things, a mix of both? How does that work for you in that regard? Because
I think,
with crossover bands like that, it can be difficult. Sometimes you're too much of one, like you're too much of each to play either environment.
That's right. Yeah. And that's forever a problem with this kind of genre, and it's why it's kind of a much smaller pond. But yeah, we've done both, and it's sort of we actually have played more metal lineups when we were more of an electronic band. Funnily enough, this is just how the history of the band went. We played on a lot of, especially when you're sort of not a well-established act, you'll play a lot of sort of gigs that have you'll play pubs and you'll play things where you'll come across lots of different genres, and then playing on like Melbourne especially is very big for sort of metal festival lineups and things like that. So just getting established, we played with a lot of metal bands, and now what's very funny is we are playing to overseas crowds on stages that are almost entirely electronic, and we're the most metal, and we're playing more metal to those kind of crowds, so it's kind of inverted.
Yeah, okay.
I like it.
So you mentioned overseas crowds there. Is that so? I'm not too familiar with, like I will be honest, I've only more recently become familiar with Cyrus as an act. What sort of overseas stuff have you been involved with?
So we did we've done, like I said, it's a small pond, so it really, I think in some ways there's not much more movement you can get sort of from our from where industrial music is right now. We've kind of achieved that sort of getting invited to play overseas festivals is as far as you can go. So unless we wanted to go a little bit more poppy or something, we've been very blessed. We played a UK tour in 2018, which was just perfect. That was right before there was all the touring problems because of COVID, and all of the changes in the music industry were not as extreme. 2018 was like the golden year, so we did a European tour there, and then we just last year we played a UK festival that's probably the biggest in the UK for the kind of music that we play. It's called Resistance with a Z on the end. And that was awesome. It's a 3-day festival with our kind of music, and
was that hosted in Camden Town by any chance?
No, it wasn't. No, it's at a really wonderful old giant mill in Sheffield, and everyone from Camden and everyone from London will travel for that 3-day weekend to go to Sheffield. Yeah.
That must have been a hell of a time.
Yeah, it was fantastic, and it was nice. Just that was the the first international show after Covered, so just being able to go back out there, it was really surreal. Like, yeah, just I mean, I'm sure over the last 6 months or so, you two have probably heard a lot of shit about, hey, I'm glad Covered's over or whatever, but especially in the UK, it's really not. They just sort of decided that was it. They were just going to open up and hope for the best. So yeah, exactly. So we played a festival to a city that was still kind of unlocking, but it was very powerful, and so many people had been stuck inside for like 2.5 years or something. So it was party time. Like, they were ready to go.
Yeah, they would have relished the opportunity to get out and have a good time for sure. And how was the response over there to the kind of stuff you guys were doing, being that more industrial vibe on a festival where that was, a little bit of the outsider vibe, I guess.
Well, they'd love it over in London, and then being Australian on top of that.
Yeah, it's a bit of that. I would say that that festival has had on its stages all kinds of different acts over the years, so it wasn't a big surprise to anyone there. It was it was one of those things that, okay, this is another band that's crossing genres and pushing genres and stuff. It all just goes to our particular flavor of how we do it is what people wanted to see. That festival's had well-known industrial pioneers. It's also had like more modern industrial bands like Three Teeth and all kinds of things. So yeah, it was a good reception, but we knew it would be. We played that festival before in 2015, so they sort of knew what to expect. But we were, I would say, even more metal this time around.
That's good, and you got re-invited. That's fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So I'm looking on YouTube Music at the moment, and I'm seeing, a number of albums going back to 2017. Mm-hmm. But surely there was music released prior to that?
Yeah, so like we will support streaming services because of our record label, because we want to be fair to our record label, but we're generally not super into streaming services. So
respect.
It's just, yes. Well, don't get me started. Maybe for later.
Maybe for later on. Don't worry.
We've got a whole segment for that.
For sure. But no, we our first album was 2008 when it was just me.
Okay. So
can you get your hands on that still?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can. You can actually get it on iTunes, and you can buy it from our website. And
fantastic.
It is out there, but it's sort of, that one's probably the most limited. Everything else, like I can't speak for YouTube Music, but most of the other music should be on Spotify for those people who use it. Although we recommend Bandcamp because that shit's the best.
You get a bigger cut from those ones. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm very much one of those people that, like, I pride myself on the kind of engineering that I do, and when you stack up music on Spotify where every band is exactly the same volume, etc., makes my little mastering engineer heart die.
Yeah, well, if there's one thing that annoys the absolute shit out of me with Spotify, is my car volume only goes up so high.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's nothing worse than when I'm listening to it in my car, and I'm listening to a cracking song, and then another cracking song comes on, and it's lower, and I can't make it go any higher.
The loudness matching's all kinds of weird on there.
It annoys the shit out of me. You mentioned that you were about mixing and mastering before. So you do that all in house, or is that something that is branched out upon or outsourced upon?
All of the mixing and the songwriting and the production is done in house in my studio, my home studio. In fact, the only time we really do anything outside of that is when we actually go into rehearsal spaces, which we need because Ryan is one of the loudest drummers I know. And then you have to, it's.
I know a drummer that could probably give him a run for his money.
I'm sure
the guy that plays drums for my band, both of my bands, is like, he's one of those drummers that every time he hits it as hard as he physically can.
Yeah.
And he's a big boy.
He's a big
maximum
boy, but loud
velocity.
and, yeah, 127 on everything.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Little witty joke in there for the tech heads.
Yay. No, we do everything but mastering. Basically, the mastering I do sometimes, depending on the use case. So I master the remixes that we make for other bands, and then we have the record label has a in-house mastering engineer. Well, there's a couple, and we have our guy that we like, but I have done mastering work for other people. The main thing with that is really just giving your ears a break. You should try to avoid at least mastering your own material, because you might be a really good engineer, but if you've heard something for 2 years straight, there's not a chance in hell you'll be able to EQ that to perfection.
That's what I've found as well. Like, I did the first Skunk Bone album, and I gave a shot at mastering that, and I found like I had to remove myself from the material and not listen to it for at least a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And then try and come in with somewhat refreshed ears to do it, because you were like mixing it, you're listening to it on your system constantly, and down to the finest details, and really straining to hear everything, and then to try and adjust that without giving yourself that break to refresh, it's impossible unless you're super talented with it, or you can switch to a different audio setup to do the mastering on and hear it differently.
That's not a bad idea, actually. If I had an unlimited budget, I'd have a separate room with a different setup with different monitoring speakers.
Yep.
I would
have
love
a mastering
to do that.
room.
Yeah, have a mastering room. Yeah.
That's absolutely, and that's what some people do. That's what some setups do. They've got a smaller space just set up for mastering, which is it allows for that approach. It allows you to get that refreshed sound in a different a different board, different gear, different setup, so you're hearing it in a different light, and that's it's not a bad way to do it. It's not a bad way to do it if you can, but so you mentioned you do remixes for other bands as well there.
Yeah.
Is that something you've done a lot of?
Yes, we've done a bunch of those over the years. I think we went through a period around 2017, 2016, where we were doing a whole lot, because it was just part of, we were in that stage where we had connected, for the first time, or the first few years, with international acts actually out there on the road. We'd met these people. And we wanted to continue to maintain connections, and a remix in our scene. A remix is a really good way of kind of doing that, because you can it helps you cross promote your music with theirs, and there's a bit of cross pollination. And sometimes later on they'll come back and go like, I like the production, let's collaborate on a track, and you hope it goes somewhere. But that's very much like an electronic music scene thing.
It's a bit like rappers doing features on each other's songs.
Well, yeah, and I would like to be able to I've done a little bit of that as well, which is obviously sort of slightly different, where you're just sort of doing a recording session. But yeah, well, we had a guy from a US friend of ours that's also on the same record label. He did a rap on one of our tracks, and it was pretty good. It was very sort of very nasty, aggressive, anti-capitalist rap. It was good.
Nice. What track's that on? I'm gonna have to listen to that one.
That one is a bit of an odd one. That's on the album called Apocrypha, and that's called Deep State.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna have to. That featuring Seraphim System. My old stage name was Seraph, so that's
nice.
Ties in there. That's beautiful. I like that. That's going on the fucking list for sure. Cool. So, look, obviously you've done a lot of music over the 14 odd years. Obviously we want, as musicians and performers, we like to always try and think our most recent stuff is our best. We want to strive to do better each time than our last one. But what for you personally is the favorite out of all the albums that you've done?
A favorite album?
Yeah, your favorite album, just to go.
Favorite album.
That's whether it was the most fun to record, or whether you just had the most fun listening back to it and you enjoy listening back to it more than maybe the others, or that you get the most fulfillment out of? What's your personal favorite?
I think it's hard to choose an album, but I will choose Satellite Empire, which is the one that we did before our most recent Apocrypha. So Satellite Empire came out in 2015, and that I'm choosing because it has a track on it that we recorded with Kiva that I really like, that's very different to what we usually write, and it sticks in my head. I see, I love writing soundtracky kind of music. I've got a kind of a flair for string composition and something you might might hear in a video game or a movie soundtrack, that kind of thing. And I've always wanted to kind of like use Kiva's amazing voice on something that sounded really cinematic. We did experiment with that earlier. We have a song from 2013 called Our Cities Are Burning, which sort of definitely went there, but we perfected it with this track called The People We've Lost on Satellite Empire. And it is very much like an ode to a lot of my influences, like 90s Ghost in the Shell anime and things like that. And you know, it's sort of that cross with maybe I'm not sure if this is kind of your scene, but I don't know if you've heard of Dead Can Dance, or like a really big ethereal ambient ethno kind of thing.
I have not, but
Dead Can Dance?
Yeah, Dead Can Dance. A very well-known alternative band that have been around for many years. You guys are it'll blow your mind. You should have a listen to it.
Awesome. I love hearing that shit.
wicked. Okay, cool. So you've been very busy. You've obviously been, you've been touring. You've done, gone overseas. You've got a boatload of albums out there for people to listen to. What else have you got in the works? What's coming up? What's the next stuff that you're working on, if you're working on anything?
Yeah, I'm definitely always working on stuff. I think I've got Overcovered, I did something that I swear I would never do, which is start side projects.
Ooh, that's dangerous.
Yeah, I know, because Cyrus has always been about experimenting with all these different sort of genres and sounds all in the one project, and that's one of the reasons why we get compared to other acts that do this, like Cell Dweller and that kind of thing, where the discography is very vast and has a lot of different kind of sounds in it. And I think again, like Norvo have this sort of thing where they've got a long enough history where you can listen to a variety of different genres.
Yeah.
And so we're sort of similar in that way. And we have done some drum and bass, which is music subgenre of electronica, and we've done some kind of mid-tempo-y house kind of stuff. And now I have started a drum and bass project. I've started a mid-tempo-y house kind of project with somebody else. And I have a anti-religion, religious music kind in project on the back burner. There's a really
that one I'm interested to hear.
I'm interested in the house. I'm interested in the house and the drum and bass personally.
Yeah, nice. But whether any of that stuff will come to fruition, I've also got 2 Cyrus releases that I'm kind of working on simultaneously as well. We have an album that's finished already, and I think a lot of people that follow us, a lot of our fans know that it's finished. It's just, like I said, we don't really like streaming services, so because of that, we've got to wait for the right time to at least be able to say it doesn't cost $1 million to ship physicals. We don't make all sales from physicals, but we like to ship physicals still a little bit, and they come from Osaka, where our label mate Jamie is based, and he cannot send anything from Osaka right now. It will cost far too much money. So we're waiting, and we think it's maybe 3 months away. And as soon as we know we can ship, we're just going to drop the album. So
Awesome. Very, very cool. So can you tell us much information about that album, or are you kind of keeping it all under wraps until it's ready to go?
I can say some things. I can say that the single from it has already come out. So we usually do 2 singles per album, and not always like this, but in this case we're releasing both singles before the album comes out. So that might give you a little hint as to that there is another single going to drop, very, very soon. But we've Save and Suffocate, which came out in April last year. That was timed around playing at Resistance. That's why it sort of came out then. We could have waited a little bit later, but we thought, we were going to play a festival, so we dropped that. That's sort of an opening flavor to the album. So the middle of it's got a lot of kind of it's electronica, but then it has kind of like a metalcore breakdown middle section, and so there's more of that on the album, and there's also a lot of bass music, like we have been doing the last few albums. So yeah, more metal, more bass music, more of everything really.
Awesome.
It's good to keep the variety around, and not get
bogged down. You have the evolution is important. That's something that's key, I think. In and we talked about this before on the podcast. We find that you can get bands like AC/DC or whatever that just do the same album every time, right? But no one really cares about the newer stuff. They only care about the older stuff, and the newer stuff's not any different. We're versus bands like Metallica that have evolved their sound over the years, that have tried different things, and have had success because they've varied their sound in a lot of ways. So I'd love to see it. I'm very keen to check out the album when it eventually comes out. Try and get my hands on that one for sure. And so you mentioned there's another one kind of in the works. That's kind of the start of the project.
That's right. Yeah. So I've got like I think after doing this album, I've got this sort of weird need to not do albums for a little while. So it's sort of 2 EPs, and they sound quite different. So that's why I mean, knowing the record label, they might want to put it together as an album in time. But I like to go. I'm very all my music is based around different themes, so it's very thematic. So if 2 things don't match, I would rather have them separate. So I'm thinking 2 EPs, and one is very, very different, and that one's gonna take as long as it takes. It's one of those passion project kind of ones, and and then the other one is sort of a little bit more of what our fans can expect. So it's more of the kind of industrial and bass music and metal.
Awesome. And in terms of shows, like what's in the future for shows? Is there anything big coming up in that regard, or are you just taking some time away from that at the moment to focus on getting these albums, these EPs done?
Yeah, I think right now I'm not exactly on break, but I would say that we are only looking for bigger opportunities. We always, we're at the stage now where we're on a few different mailing lists, and we always see sort of calls for bands and things like that. And maybe 5 or 6 years ago we would have been really keen to do whatever. But we have one member that lives in Sydney, so that being Kiva. So that's one of the reasons why we've sort of slowed down on the live shows end. But also there's some problems with venue availability, especially in Melbourne at the moment. And just for those people who at home who are wondering, over COVID, all these big bands had to stay home, so they were playing our big venues that usually our medium bands are playing, because our big bands are overseas. So that means our medium bands were playing our small venues, and that means our small bands were playing nothing. And it has gotten a bit better, but it's still it's feeling a bit cramped, and I think it's going to maybe take another year to sort of dissipate.
Yeah, it's kind of changing. It's hurt everything all over the shop. I mean, we had up here in Brisbane, we've had recently just had one of the venues at Sunshine Coast closed down over a number of factors, like they opened worst possible timing, early 2020. Like they
that's
right at the
awful.
start of 2020. and
Yeah.
It was the worst fucking time, and you know, opening a dive bar on Sunshine Coast was copped a lot of flack as well. A lot of the the old retirees that live up there were like, "Oh, why do we need a fucking venue that's gonna play loud music?" But they were doing as well as they could, but unfortunately it's too much. So they're having to kind of shut down for a moment. Obviously, Crowbar up here was, they kind of closed indefinitely until and unless they can find a new location for everything for COVID. So that's, I mean, look,
Frankie's Pizza.
Yep, in Sydney you can.
Oh yeah, that's so sad. Not Frankie's,
like,
man.
Yeah, it's hurt a lot of venues, and that's limited options, I think. But I will say Brisbane has fared a little better than some places.
I would agree with that. From what I've seen, Sydney looks like it's been the worst hit. The problem with Sydney is it didn't really have a huge amount to begin
Well,
with.
yes, it did
So,
decline for a while
yeah.
because of the fucking lockout laws and the live music scene and whatever government supports behind that not being behind full bands or especially alternative music. It's fine.
Yeah.
They're fine if it's if it's an acoustic duo or a covers band or whatever. But as soon as you've got like a kind of alternative thing that's maybe a bit counterculture or a little anti-establishment, all that support evaporates, unfortunately.
Yeah, totally.
Which has made
We've seen that. Like, we find that we expected to play a lot of Sydney shows when we became a more of a live act or a live centric act, I should say. And we never did. We played, we never really have. We played more in Canberra than we played in Sydney.
The basement.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that venue.
That's the best. The amount of times when I was living in Sydney, the amount of times I would go down to shit at the basement just because it was a rad venue and the show was an awesome show.
Yeah.
Like I think I was getting a lift back to the hotel room once, and the person who was giving me a lift went through a red light. The cops pulled him over, and they were like, "Where are you going?" I'm just taking these guys back to the hotel. So the cop was trying to be like, "Oh, big man, giant fucking fortune in the bag." I'm like, "Oh, where are you guys from?" "Oh, Sydney." "What are you doing in Canberra?" "We came down to go to a show." "You came all the way from Sydney just to go to a show?" "Yeah." Like yeah, the basement's been an amazing venue, and unfortunately I haven't been down there for a few years, but yeah, and the amount of renos and work that's been there has been amazing, so it just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, they're not going anywhere. I mean, it's also it's such a wacky venue as well. It's like underneath a pet shop, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we're able to get into the restaurant space next door and expand as well has helped a lot. I know they used to get a lot of flack from the restaurants about the music being too loud too early. So the opportunities they've had there have really that venue has kind of popped from the Canberra music scene and keeping that going because it's just been such an awesome place to play. People like going to that venue because it's a good venue to go to, regardless of you like whether you specifically know what shows on there or not, or if you're gonna like what's on there. It's a good venue to hang out at. It's a good place to hang out.
Great bar.
That's and yeah. But yeah, I was at one point. I was down there so often, like people thought I'd moved down there.
Oh yeah.
A lot of the staff, my friends down there, they'd be like, "You're living down here now. Like I see you here all the time."
Actually, guys, write this time down. I just my dog is just making all kinds of noises, and he needs to get outside, or he's just gonna be mad.
Away.
Yeah, alright, quick question, quarter time.
Getting to know you, getting to know all about you.
So, welcome to the Quick Question Quarter. For those who have not seen the podcast before, we have a bunch of rapid fire questions for our guests. They start easy, so you should be able to get a nice quick answer to those. And they get a little bit more involved, a little more complicated as we get further down. So those ones may require a little more thought. Without further ado, let's get to know our lovely guest. What was the first instrument that you ever played?
Keyboards, like one of the old Wally boards.
Ah, awesome. Lovely. What was the first album that you purchased?
Oh fuck. Eiffel 65.
Yeah. Love that. Okay? So with that, what's your thoughts on all these songs popping up using the melody from Blue?
Oh, fuck off!
I hate it. I'm done.
Okay, so in the music world we call that interpolation, and I've heard that melody interpolated about 3 times in the last 2 years on all on music that has made a lot of money, and potentially as much as the original songwriters. Horrible. I mean, I love Blue, but yeah, not a fan of the interpolation.
What was your first live concert?
This was a kind of like a little dive bar gig in Footscray, with some industrial acts and some DJs in 2008. It was called Cyberball, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. But it was just me and a bunch of painted TVs and a joystick and a microphone.
Wow. Okay. What's an instrument you've always wanted to learn but haven't had the opportunity to do so yet?
I think the duduk, which is a nice reed instrument that sounds like Black Hawk Down. It's like I said, I really like cinematic sounds, and it sounds very cinematic. It's got that kind of like sort of Eastern reed sound.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lovely. Yeah, I've just had a look at that one. That's pretty cool. It's almost like the proper thing that like a recorder was based on, right?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I think that's what it looks like, but you'd be surprised the kind of sound that comes out of it. It certainly would be suitable more for something like the Gladiator soundtrack. My dad plays Irish whistle, which is it doesn't sound anything like it, but I have some musicianship in my family already in relation to playing like reed instruments and that sort of thing. I have never tried doing that, but it's just one of those weird things where I really like the sound of it, and maybe one day.
Awesome. Very, very cool. If you could pick one big band or artist to open a show for, now I will say this could be living or dead, active or not, whatever era of this band or artist you prefer. If you could pick one big band or artist to open a show for, who would it be?
Kraftwerk.
Of course. I should have known we'd be going that way with it. Love a good bit of Kraftwerk for sure. Who is an artist or a band that you're listening to right now that you believe is underrated and needs more attention?
Oh, I've got so many of those, but I will say a really cool US act called Thief. Everyone should check out a track called Teenage Satanist. It's very cool. This guy does a kind of trip-hop, goth trip-hop industrial sing rap thing, and it's very, very different. If anyone likes Portishead or Uncle or any of that like softer trip-hop stuff, or even Massive Attack, think that cross with Tool but more electronic. It's amazing, it defies description as well. It's like one of those bands where you can when you listen to it, you go, oh yeah, I can kind of see what he's saying, but it is its own thing entirely, and so incredibly underrated. And I love bands that play with different genre combinations and make it their own. So that's definitely one of those.
I love that. I'll put that one on my list.
Yeah, I'm getting look at that.
The way that you're describing the genre blending reminds me, not stylistically, but in terms of how broad the genre and thing is. There's a Scottish band called SAOR, SAOR, and they combine like black metal with traditional Scottish folk stuff. It's such
I know the name. I can't say I couldn't place any of the music, but I've seen that I know the name. I think that's because I hang out in all these forums about fusion music and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think originally it was just like one guy doing everything too, which is fucking crazy. I'm pretty sure they got a whole band now, but yeah. What is something that people may be surprised to learn about you?
I have a small dog, a Pomeranian cross Chihuahua.
That must be a very, very small dog.
yeah.
Okay.
I love small
Now we
dogs.
get into the meat of it. Last couple of questions. You obviously recorded and released a lot of music over the years. What is the cringiest band name or song name that you've been involved with?
Involved with? Fuck, that's
Yeah.
hard. I'll have to think.
A bit too edgelord, a little bit too sort of like, oh, I can't. You look back and you're like,
I can't believe you did that.
I think when I will have to say that when I have been making electronic music for longer than Cyrus, a lot longer. I was one of those guys that was playing in a DAW in primary school because I didn't really know what it was. You know, I was one of those guys that just sort of started early, not really knowing what I do. Show and tell would be a CD I burnt of like acid loops that I made or something. You know, so I had a really early kind of trance techno project called Tox, TOX, Tox for Toxic.
ooh,
Yeah.
That's good.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. I like that.
All right. And last question: what is your most controversial musical opinion?
Look, I don't know how controversial this is, but Daniel Ek, the CEO of Spotify, can get absolutely fucked. This is a guy that has invested like 100 million euros in a AI defense company called Helsing. So this is where your money is going. It's funding war, and it's just not that well known. But if you Google that, it'll come up straight away. It's not like some crazy conspiracy theory. Helsing is like a not that well known tactical warfare software platform. So, you know, and he probably just thinks it's a good business investment, but like, I refuse to be deeply associated, or I refuse to push any link or to Spotify. Like I said, we have to be nice to the label, but I think that's what makes it controversial. I guess now I know took me a second to figure out what I was going to say. It's controversial because absolutely fuck him, but also be understanding of your label. So it's a bit of a two-faced thing. It's like we still have to be on Spotify because
it's one of those
people
things,
use
right?
it.
Like there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, right?
Yeah. Well, you know what? We could debate on that, but like I definitely think that this is one of those things where I can both educate people, but also understand whether it's if it's the only way they're getting their music, or if it's all they know, or if it's a stepping stone to something better. I understand.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. All right. Well, there you go. Thank you for that. That was the quick question quarter. And you know what comes next? If you've seen the podcast before, you know where we're going now. It's time for my favorite segment, the fuck off file.
Alright, it's gonna work.
Damn.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah. All right. The fuck off files. So, again, if you've seen the podcast, you know what's up. If you haven't before, we basically go, right, if you could snap your fingers like Thanos and fuck off 3 things out of the music industry, what would they be and why? They can be anything. Had lots of answers, had a very broad range of answers.
It could be punters.
Can be fucking punters getting too drunk and thinking they own the fucking thing. Can be, venues taking a cut of the merch. It can be streaming platforms. We've had someone say slap bass. But yeah, so 3 things that you could just go eat and get them out of the music industry. What's your first thing and why?
Okay. I would say playlists on streaming services. It's okay to have your own personal playlist, but I'm talking about playlists that other people can access. And whilst it seems like a good idea to start off with, for all the reasons that people do use them, what they actually do is encourage people to write music into a very specific funnel, hoping that their music will get onto a playlist, because once you're in a playlist you get so many X more streams, that times 100 more than you would usually get if people are just searching for your music. and these playlists get played in the background over and over at people's work and in their homes and things like this. So you're racking up the streams that way more organically. This kind of written music that you hope someone will put on a playlist is incredibly limiting from like a genre perspective and from a song length perspective and from all kinds of things. It's actually pushing people to write shorter music with chorus earlier to get more people to go, yes, this is in the zone for this playlist, and add it. And you know, we write music where it's like, cool, the middle section belongs on this electronic playlist, the second section belongs in the metal playlist, another section belongs in an ambient playlist, and of course what happens, that wonderful piece of music gets on no playlist because it interrupts the flow or whatever. Yeah, it's absolutely fucked. It's actually rewriting the way, or encouraging people to rewrite their music.
Well, it's the same as it's what happened with radio, right? With radio play, it's what happened with the 3.5 minute pop song formula.
Yes, absolutely.
It's the latest stage of that evolution of writing to a formula to get to be more appealing to that, you know, that distribution method.
Yeah.
And
Well, it even gets to a stage now where bands are writing stuff for TikTok.
yeah,
You know, you got that that 30-second video, so they try and write the
30
best 30 seconds that they can do.
you know what? I saw a video the other day, and it, like, I guess it makes sense if you're trying to make music for that audience, but it infuriated me so much from a creative, you know, music creative standpoint. It basically said, don't write songs. Don't start out writing songs. It said, take a day, write 50 choruses. Write 50 choruses, record those choruses, and then put them out on social media with your videos, just the choruses, and then whichever ones do well, whichever ones get traction, then write the rest of those songs. And I'm like, that is so fucking... I hate it.
I think
You just turn
that's the right-
songwriting
I think
into
that's
marketing.
the right response. Yeah, no. So the thing is, it's like the person giving that advice may not recommend it. It's just that something that they think might work, and it might work. But what upsets me is that it might work.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it, and any self-respecting musician probably isn't going to do it. But the fact is, like, we are at the point now where if your aim is to make money and survive
play
off
the
your
game.
craft, you might have to do that. Yeah.
You have to play that game, which is what I hate, because you can't just be... I know in a sense it's not been a meritocracy in a very, you know, pretty much ever, right? Or pretty much for 50 years it hasn't been a meritocracy. A lot of it's been about who you know, what connections you can make, etc. But more and more, the idea of the meritocracy and the idea of you're just good at what you're doing, it will reach people. That's just getting more and more buried, I think, over time, because it's just becoming worse and worse with that. The way the algorithms push things, the way algorithms send things viral, the way social media has destroyed people's attention spans, the way that streaming services have devalued music in the eyes of and the minds of the average consumer. Everything is just tearing that down.
Now, whilst I agree with all of that, and it's fucking terrible, but it's true. However, I will say one thing. When people hear these long run-on kind of doomsday fact lists like this, I always want to remind them there is something that does cut through all that noise a little bit, and that is, or sometimes a lot, depending on the person, and that is if you're just writing good music. And what I mean by that is we are one of the only, like, we are invited to play these international festivals on the back of, you know, Bandcamp and songwriting alone. Like, you know, we don't push our streaming services, and not a lot of bands can do that now. And what gets us there is literally people just really like the songs. If people really like the songs, if they're really, really, really good, people will find an excuse, they'll find a way, they'll find a different way to enjoy it. You know, they'll you know, hell, fucking pirate if you have to, you know. I'm serious.
I agree that there is still ways for that to get out there. It's just everything is trending away from that.
Well, you have
makes
a
it
look at-
harder and harder for that.
You have a look at it now. Like your computers don't have CD drives anymore. Your cars don't have CD. Like I've got cars. None of them came with CD players. I've got no choice but to plug in my phone unless I got the radio.
Yeah.
You know, and I, you know, obviously talking to a lot of musicians, and you've just sat there and said pirate it. You would rather have someone pirate your stuff than listen to it on fucking Spotify and make that money. Like, that is fucking saying something, like from a musician standpoint.
Well, I want people to enjoy the music and then come to the shows. I mean, at the end of the day, if you want to play shows, you're not going to, you know, even the biggest bands in our little corner, in our little scene, are not making enough money to live on, not solely anyway. So instead of looking at it like that, it's better to look at it like, okay, you can sell t-shirts and merch and other little things that will fund you so much better than little streams will. So all you need to do is, you know, if you are looking for some at least financial compensation for your craft, get in the position where people will want to buy that stuff, because I am super passionate about merch. I'm a big t-shirt guy. We always have the, you know, this is a thing that I can boast about, that I can brag about, because no one can ever argue once they see them, but we always have the nicest t-shirts at the festivals. You know, we have the nicest ones. They cost me so much money to make, and they are so much nicer, and the margin is smaller, but man, I'm so passionate about that stuff.
Well, there's nothing worse than getting a band t-shirt and after a couple of washes, because you're going to wear the shit out of them because you love them. They get thin and they just go crap.
Printing onto Gildan and shit like that, you know, like bad t-shirt stock in general is just like, it just doesn't feel nice. I want it to feel premium, you know, like we get ours done on American Apparel kind of equivalent, and if you put a t-shirt on and it feels nice and the print is thick, it's such a fucking religious experience.
Yeah, it definitely helps. It really does help. All right, what's number 2? What's your number 2 on the file?
I would say this is a tricky one, because I have friends that I will not name that have done this for a long time before they branched out, but I would like to ban all playback only bands from our scene. And what I'm talking about is people go up, they'll do their vocals, but they've got entire electronic music backing, all just coming from an iPod or whatever, and they do a live show by, like, you know, hyping the crowd up and, you know, doing a bit of a silly shit on stage. And yes, they're doing live vocals, but I feel like that's just very good karaoke. And this does extend, obviously. I wish we could get rid of that and pop as well, but that's never going to happen. I would at least, like, I think it's not too much of a stretch to say that our scene has a lot of amazing musicians in it anyway that could perform these songs live, and doing this just for safety, for like, oh, we don't have time to, you know, we don't want anything to go wrong because the festival lineup's big or whatever, that shit can fuck off. You know, that comes from this bogus, dodgy DJ culture where people have pre-mixed sets. You know, you go on and you play a USB stick that's already got a set on it for an hour, and that has come over into our industrial scene.
Wow.
Yeah, and I really don't like it. I've seen too many bands do this and pretend to play keys and everything, like pretend to play their instruments. So
they're miming.
They're not miming, because the vocals will be the only thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're fake playing.
Oh
whatever.
God! If I have too many cans. If I have too many cans and I catch that, I'm kicking the keyboard over while you're playing it.
You should do it. When we had a keys player, he was like kind of well known for being the only guy that was playing it live on a festival or whatever, and consequently it became a strange thing, because like these other bands would have a live drum kit or whatever, but it became a strange thing where he was making requests of the sound engineer and they were just like, huh, what, you need me to do something, you know, like it was one of those kind of things.
Wow.
And still some people thought he was playing fake keys. So it's one of the reasons why that annoyed me so much, that it's like, now being 3-piece, what you see is like there's nothing, you kind of can't fake it. It's like you see us singing and you see the drums, and you just see it, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously in the style of music that you work with, backing tracks for certain elements are probably very common.
Totally.
But I think having everything except the vocals be on that backing track, especially if there's other people on stage pretending to play their instrument with it, that's so dodgy. I'm sorry. Like, if I was a fan of a band, and I went to see them and that was the performance I got, I would be really, because I want to see the performance. I want to see them play the material. I don't want to see them get up there with, you know, and mime along to it like that. I'd be insulted as a fan. That's what
It's very, very, very common. Like more common than, not even just in the industrial scene, but in a lot of the like this sort of music festival scene in general. So we could definitely do without that.
I'm fucking speechless.
Okay. That's crazy. All right, what's your third one? What's your third fuck off file?
I'm gonna say, I seem to be a bit of a broken record on this, but I'm gonna say once again, Daniel Ek, fuck you. I'm gonna say I say something about this guy particularly is that yes, I spoke about the kind of unfortunate investments that he's made with money that he's made off Spotify. So I won't go into that anymore. Instead, I'll mention something else. This guy is making money off all these amazing, talented people, and he himself is not a real musician. There are some interviews where he says, you know, I used to play guitar or whatever, or, you know, I used to do this, and the story keeps changing, but he's not a real musician. He's not even a huge music lover. And his most recent advice to people is how to make money on Spotify: write shorter songs more often, don't write albums. And it is literally this guy has he commands too much power in the industry to be saying all of this negative, anti-creative bullshit. So I'm not entirely against streaming services as a concept, but this particular person can get fucked.
Well, that comment can go and get fucked because we've said it on here many times. Or I know I've said it. Man, the art of writing a good, meaty, full album from front to back, like one of those ones where you don't need to skip nothing. It's dying. Like the whole concept of youngings now being able to do 12 cracking songs. Especially now, because there's realistically no excuse, because a lot of kids now can write all this stuff at home if they have the right equipment and they have the right funding.
That's it.
You know, but
yeah, and that's what we talked about before. I mean, I've seen something that's bugged me is when I've seen, like, you know, I like rap, but in terms of what I prefer about it, I'm more in like the horrorcore rap sort of niche. Something I've seen a lot of is like, you know, there is that waterfall release method which I didn't realize that's what it was at the time. So like what I'm seeing is like I'm used to them releasing, you know, standard method, right? Like you have a single video and you're like, hey, here's the fucking album, right? And you know, you start to see that they kind of pitch to releasing, you know, a whole bunch of individual songs with like visualizer or a lyric video or a music video or whatever, and then after they've done that like 12 or 13 months, they're like, hey, we've got a new album coming out, and it's literally just the album that is the album page for all those songs that's been released.
Yeah.
There's nothing new on it, and I'm like, and that's why like one of the groups did something different recently, that they didn't pay for that. They went, alright, we're dropping this new album, and they only had different topics for like the first 6 months.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It's now gone on streaming just as a whole drop. It's way better. And you know, like I said, I feel like it's just a way that you operate the gifting, and they're sometimes getting a feeling a bit left behind, or like old man yelling at cloud. So I think that this whole, you know, it's just like, I agree, like I don't feel like it's a struggle to make making a whole album.
Yeah. And maybe like so I've thought about this, and we definitely think that one temporary solution might be to offer more than just audio. So our next physical release could potentially include like we're thinking about doing these floppy disks that are actually, they're not real floppy disks. They have a little section in them, and a little USB stick pops out. And the little USB stick, it has the album on it, but it's also got all this bonus material, the proper 4K copy of the music videos, you know, all this bonus stuff on there in just a directory, and like, you know, it can be a place where you stick stuff that you really weren't sure what you're going to do with it, or whatever. It can even just have the scripts to some of our, like, I think it would be a lot of fun to just literally drop a Word document in there that shows the entire social media release plan of the band, which we do every, like, you know, 6 months, whatever, just to show people, well, one, people like looking behind the curtain, right? They like seeing sort of what goes on, but two, to sort of show people like how much work goes into this sort of thing, and just like giving people this as a gift, like just more content. So an album is not just the audio, but all of the kind of life that's related to that couple of years of the band's work.
That's what essentially albums were. When you got them.
Finding ways to make that the physical copy more appealing. Like that's something. I mean, yeah, we're looking at something similar with Skunkbone, right? Like what we want to do is make the physical copies of the album special edition, right? So you're getting maybe some extra songs, maybe a few extra songs that didn't make it onto like the digital ones. Like the digital one, say, has like, you know, 13 songs, and that's what goes out on streaming platforms. You get, you know, 16 new songs, you get like live cuts of other stuff as well, maybe some music recognition, like, you know, extra stuff like poster, and, you know, the extra ways to make it more appealing, right? So that people, even though they can get most of it on streaming, they can get more if they go and buy the album, which is absolutely increase that.
This has worked. We released our last album, Apocrypha, had a special edition which came with a whole second disc, which was like an hour live performance recording, and it sold out. So yeah, like you know, and then the standard edition did okay, but nowhere near as well as that edition. And it had an art booklet in it as well. So it's just this art booklet that was at like 8 pages, and then you had some extra, and then you had lyrics as well. So it was more, yeah, it was like that was enough to make it sell out for sure.
Yeah, you've got to make that increase in value. And value, and that's unfortunately what it makes the value in one consumer. Like, why should I buy a like, well, yeah, it's extra, you know, it's stuff in that, you know, but it's a different way to like make
Yeah.
way.
And that you know what, like, again, I'm trying to take away from the doom and gloom. You can use this as an opportunity to reinvent what you're selling to your fans and what kind of a creator you are. Try to see it as a bit of fun, you know, because it can be, and it can be finding unique solutions to these. These are all problems we've spoken about tonight, but like finding unique solutions to these that no one else is doing is quite like fulfilling once you get there.
It's like the final, you know, like final, you know, like in sales again. I think thinking sales is the final option because people are doing final as the and album. So
Yes.
like people buying final bands that like don't even own.
Yes. Yeah. That's it.
They're buying it. They're buying it. Like, that's what needs to happen. That's what it is, right? Like, you've got to find a way to be creative about your music, and then it's more
Yeah.
where they package right. So by take it and the pack so that way it will do special edition that extra to get lyrics, all that kind of stuff. Like a live recording, like a video of there.
Yeah,
That kind of thing. One way to make it. That is turn one.
that's it. Yeah.
That's
That is a solution. I'm just waiting for some genius motherfucker to come up with something even better. And you don't know it until you come up with it, and then you go, oh, okay, hang on. There's or you see someone else do it, and you're like, that guy's onto something. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming along and having a chat with us tonight. I think it's a good one. I know it's starting to get a bit late down that way. So we will let you go. Just before we do there, quickly, you mentioned you've got another single that's coming out.
Yes.
What's that time frame? Is there any plan from
I would be hesitant to give an exact time, but I can tell you that it is definitely the first half of this year, and if what's more exciting is once people see that single, the album is going to come rapid fire afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what most people are after. Yeah. The single is going to be called Axioms. Yeah, and it's actually got a really fucking cool B-side as well that we really like. It's more of a the first single is kind of more of a Josh, kind of more of a me sort of single, and then this next one is more of a Kiva kind of single. So we're doing it that way.
Right. There you go. Keep an eye out for that one. Yeah, follow mate, yeah, thank you again so much for following this one. Awesome. Up. Well, I'm not sure exactly when it's dropping. I thought it was going to be pre-tested, so I don't want to give you too much away. I'm sure Kyle will let you guys know that. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, be kind to each other. It's a lot of shit happening to us. You know, we're going to get out of it. We're going to be a much better place. You know what I'm going through. So just keep it going. Be kind to each other and take care.
Take it easy, y'all.